Hello and welcome to another movie review from New Catholic Generation. I am your host, Ned Burry from Parables of the Film Industry, and this is Marc, not Renee. And
No.
Nope. Sorry, guys. And there's Aimee from April Grace and Joe, the Catholic apologist. And we just watched Generational Sins. And dang, it was an intense movie. It is a Christian film, and I would definitely argue it is very much a Christian film.
Mm-hmm.
The story is about these two brothers who have whose mother,
A very complicated relationship.
yeah, they have a very complicated relationship with each other. They have a very complicated past. And basically what happens is their mother passes away, and it's their mother's dying wish that the older son takes the younger son back to their home in Pennsylvania to, I'm kind of guessing, reconcile with their father, who was a very abusive man. And basically that's the main plot of the story. It is a very dark movie in so many ways. A very intense movie. But before I, go ahead and ramble on, what are your guys' initial thoughts? We'll start with you, Joe.
Oh, well, it was definitely different from other Christian movies, just to start with that. And like you were saying, it was an intense movie. I mean, I found even myself at a few little points just being like, ugh, and I didn't even have the same problem as this guy. I don't have an abusive dad or family. So yeah, it was very interesting. I felt sometimes they seemed to be trying a little bit too hard, a little bit of concerns with the soundtrack like we were talking about before the shoot, but it was interesting. It was interesting.
I felt I was like apprehensive before watching the movie because I had taken the time to see the trailer, and I was like, I don't know like how this is going to turn out. Is this just going to be awful and just like too much for me, because I can be sensitive watching movies and different content, but I didn't really have any problems going through it. One of my comments in the middle was like, this guy is just so angry and so full of hurt, and he's not handling it at all.
The older brother.
And so just watching him, get upset at different things and then just, start pounding on the sink or the steering wheel or breaking things. And I'm like, honestly, like, reality check, some people live their lives just angry and, not facing what is the cause of that. And so it just like breaks my heart, and really leads me to think about, these are people we should pray for. And to know that redemption and to be able to face your past is not out of reach. It's not impossible. And so in the face of a very real situation, it was very real at times. It did not hide the struggle at all. It goes to show that, it was relatable and that people can come to find peace and to bring their lives to a place where they feel content and happy with it.
Going off of what everyone else has said, I thought it was very intense, very relatable, not like any other Christian films that we've seen, and I have to say I liked it because of that. It was also a very, very beautiful film,
very beautiful,
with the shots and like the imagery and the like metaphors of certain time of when it was in the film. And it did get a little intense for me. I actually related a lot to both brothers, funny enough, even though they're like complete opposites. And part of that is because I am a younger brother. So I could relate a lot to what he was going through, but then I was also able to relate to the struggle of the older brother, because like anger and not knowing how to process some of the stuff, because he is going through a lot and he does have a lot of pain that he's holding on to. Some of it, I'm guessing, has been for 20 years. And it was intense. I enjoyed it. I enjoyed the ride that came with the movie. I did have some problems with it from like a writing standpoint. My biggest one is there was an entire movie that we missed, which was the fact that the older brother got peace in 30 seconds.
Yeah.
But besides that, I really enjoyed it.
Yeah, yeah. The ending did feel like a little bit like rushed and like cookie cutter. Okay, here's your happy ending kind of thing. But I mean, it wasn't like bad compared to some other Christian movies.
It felt more like a prologue.
Yeah, it was definitely
an epilogue.
It was definitely an epilogue. I would definitely argue it was an epilogue. Yeah, it was definitely a very well crafted movie. The shots were really awe-inspiring in some places. The music, although it could be like a little bit repetitive at times, it was very well made and very artistic. Although probably my one complaint about the music is that, as you said, there were a few places where I'm just like, I think you could have left some music out of this area to let the characters speak for themselves rather than let the music speak for the characters kind of thing. And the acting in some areas was very good and very, very intense. I think my only major complaint is I think it might have been a little bit too intense, at least for me. And that is probably my only warning to anyone who would be interested in seeing Generational Sins. It's not a bad movie, and I definitely encourage people to see it. Spoilers for my review at the end. But for people who might have
familial issues, depression issues, brother issues.
Yeah, all that kind of stuff. I would probably, I would argue it would be very hard for people who have those problems that they're facing in life to watch this kind of movie.
Without having some kind of reaction to it.
Yes, definitely.
I rarely use that word, this word, but you might get triggered.
Yeah. God, I hate that word.
But yeah.
Oh well.
This is a point where it actually might trigger you.
Yeah.
Because one of the actual good parts about it is the fact that it is real, but there is this thing in entertainment that's called too real, which this film kind of borderlines. Like it doesn't cross too much into that line, kind of like has a tiptoe over it, but you can definitely see where they're like, if we really wanted to for artistic value, we can go there.
Yeah. A few other warnings. This is definitely not a movie you should watch with your family. This is not a movie for the kiddies.
It's PG-13 for a reason.
Yeah, it's PG-13. I would argue it's a very hard PG-13.
Oh,
there's a lot of swearing in this movie.
A lot of language.
A lot of language. Although I would argue that this is one of the fine examples because it is a very intense movie where the swearing is not there for...
It's not glorified.
It's not... Oh, it's certainly not glorified. When the characters are swearing, it's pain that's coming through with all that kind of swearing. It's not just like, oh, crap this, kind of thing. It's very much just
Or it's not, as I would call it, a Quentin Tarantino film, for those who are film buffs.
Where it's not a Tarantino film.
12 words and a 15-word sentence is the F word.
Yeah. One other thing, where I'll probably go ahead and end before anyone else would like to go ahead and open up. One of the things I greatly appreciated about this movie is the fact it is definitely a Christian film. Like you can tell it is very much a Christian film. However, it is not in your face. It is definitely subtly a Christian film, and meaning it's obviously you could tell that these characters are Christian, that they are going through a faith struggle, going through life struggle, going through just struggles, and they do. Some of them, or at least the main character in general, does eventually come to the realization that, the pain will not go away unless you have God there with you to help you through all that pain and struggle. But it was more so not like an in-your-face, God this, God that, God this, kind of thing. It was the character himself had to come to that realization on his own kind of thing, where it was I knew what? I really do need God to help me through this kind of stuff.
Yeah, and that's why even the ending where he ends up where he's spoilers, looking like he's about to commit suicide and then sees the necklace particularly, that particular point actually didn't bother me as much as like I might have expected, just because like it's established towards the beginning that, you know, his mother gives it to him before she's dying and says, I want you to have this. And it wasn't like, oh, when you have this, think of me. It's when you look at this, I want you to have peace. And that's what he looked down and saw. So like, yeah, it was a little thing of a cross, but like, I guess it felt like it meant more. It wasn't just like, oh, I see a cross and all of a sudden like I'm okay. It was more of like his mother there, like through that sign of like hope that he was kind of like looking for. I think that his reaction to that was a little bit dramatized as well. But
I actually do have a story about that in a little bit.
Okay. I feel like definitely like it was dramatized a little bit. I also felt like sometimes in the film, like even though, you know, like you guys were saying, like the language wasn't being like glorified, that they were using it, and like you can kind of tell like at the beginning it's like a lot more, and then once things start to progress it gets like much less. When like the growing starts to happen, like the language becomes less. I do feel like, as I said earlier, I felt like they were trying too hard sometimes. And I kind of felt like a lot of the language at the beginning, it just felt to me like they were putting so much of it in there, and it like as if like trying too hard. Like it's stuff I'd see like in a student film sometimes, that it's just like, oh, like trying so hard to break stereotypes, you're trying too hard type thing. Like, oh, it's a Christian movie, but like I'm gonna try really, like this is not your typical, like this is not that's what it felt like to me. I mean, I don't know if that's what they meant, but
this isn't your grandmother's Christian film.
I actually did a little bit of research on this film. I also didn't come into this film blind, because I saw the trailer and I did a little bit of research, and their main goal was to make a film first that happened to have Christian values in it. And by that, one of the actors actually didn't know that they were in a Christian film until watching the film.
wow.
That's actually really funny.
Yeah, and then also going with the cursing, it was kind of more intentional to be like, whoa, this isn't your typical Christian film.
Right.
And so, like, to your point, it is
Back and
kind
forth.
of it's right.
Like,
It's actually a really funny story. Like one of the scenes that I definitely identified with the most was actually that scene at the end where, not necessarily the whole suicide part, but more so the part when he does come across his mother's cross, and you know he's like brought to peace and everything. There was one time in my life where actually I was going through some like really, really tough struggles and everything, and actually this was actually a little bit a spring forward in my conversion, actually, in becoming Catholic. One time I was like going through all this stuff, all this, you know, bad whatever, and I thought, you know what, I may be Protestant, but it wouldn't hurt to go ahead and say a little prayer to Mary, I think. So
she'll get you every time.
Yeah, she does. And this was like when I started going to the Catholic Church and everything. So I was just like starting to learn like all this stuff. So I just said like saying, Mama Mary, through the grace of God, can you, please comfort me, kind of thing. And this bird landed right on the windowsill. And it was actually my grandmother's favorite bird, and my grandmother passed away like literally like a few months before that incident. And so when I was watching that scene, I'm just like, right
there.
It's one of the random scenes where you don't quite expect it to get you in the same like way that it's like it has a different meaning like for each person involved, because I think I can kind of relate to that whole finding peace in the random things. And so but I also like that like this movie did very well on foreshadowing.
Yeah, it was definitely very well on foreshadowing. Actually, that's another complaint I had. It was a little bit predictable.
Oh, yeah. There were several times where I would jokingly be like, what else could make this movie sadder? This happens. And this happens. And like 5 minutes later, not even 5 minutes later, it happened. I was just like, oh, wow.
Yeah, and I don't mean that it was predictable in a bad way compared to some other movies. It was more so just like, how can this movie get any worse? Oh.
I thought another thing that was interesting was they had several like incidents with the police that never got resolved or addressed.
Oh yeah.
It's like, first of all, like with the fight, he just like walks in and goes, stop. You wait right there. Like, no one handles it like that. You're under arrest. And then
come
like,
on, you can't imagine Goofy to be too hardcore.
Fun fact: the guy who plays the sheriff is the same guy who plays Goofy from old Disney.
Bill Farmer.
Yeah, I thought that was he brought that up to me, and I was like, really?
I did my research.
That's Goofy.
But the other thing was, whenever his brother comes to find him after he finds the cross, and after the whole like, should I even live, is just, first of all, how did they find him? How do they know like where he was? I mean, calling 911, sure they picked him up, but just to send him out there, it's like, well, you just destroyed this whole room, and then like,
well,
it never
technically
got
speaking, they own that property.
Yeah.
Since the father died, and so since there wouldn't have been an actual issue of like, well, the father was dead now, and then this room is all destroyed up, these two are connected, that was never going to be an issue. So the oldest son, as you saw by the epilogue, he owns that house.
Yeah.
So that also wouldn't have been an issue. The first one, I totally agree with you.
Yeah.
But
just kind of walked off. Just did not get addressed. There's a warrant for your arrest, or
you two wait right here. Hey brother, let's go get that drink and leave the bar.
Anyway, yeah, I thought the movie was very interesting. Obviously, not something you would show your kids, but it did definitely have a lot of very moving parts to it.
I really enjoyed it. Just looking at how it really lives up to the title, Generational Sins. I thought in terms of the history repeating itself, it could have maybe gone a little more into it. And I think that's just my personal opinion as to like incidents that had happened before. Maybe I missed it. But in terms of looking at the story and how they walked through it and giving, very relatable, real testimony of someone's life struggles and meeting it, I thought it was very well done. Absolutely.
I thought that it was very beautiful. Like I said before, I think that if you have a brother, this is definitely a film to watch it with, because you actually might find yourself slightly getting closer to that said person. And like it doesn't shy away from anything, which as someone who wants to get into film, I do appreciate. And I also like that the themes are so relatable. Like sometimes you don't get closure. The family that you have is the family the family you were born with is the family that you have, and they're always going to be there for you. Sometimes you just need to break something. That's very relatable because everyone gets angry, and there's nothing really wrong with that. But I also think that a theme that is very could have been hit a little bit harder. Like they do bring it up, but I think that they could have maybe hit a little bit harder is that if something happens in your family that you see there's a pattern to, it's up to you to be the one to stop it. You can't rely on other people to do that for you. And yeah, I recommend it. Just be aware of what you're getting into.
Yeah, I'm basically in the same boat as all the rest of you guys. I would definitely recommend the movie. Obviously, I would not watch it with a younger audience. And
PG-13 is probably a good one though.
Yeah, PG-13. Yeah, that was a good rating for it. Yeah, definitely well-made movie overall. A very good, inspiring story. And yeah, my only other concern is like if you're, I don't know, maybe if you are dealing with like some of these struggles in your life, maybe it might be okay to watch, but I would just warn you ahead of time that, be warned. Prepare yourself of what you're going into. So I definitely recommend the movie, though. It was definitely an awe-inspiring story. very dramatic one, and very stressful one. But definitely a very well-made and inspirational story.
Totally agree.
Yeah. All right, well, that's all the time that we have for today. And, well, we'll see you guys later. God bless.
Bye.
Bye.